Have you ever had that feeling like you're running on a script you didn't even write? That your life is just happening to you instead of you making it happen? For, gosh, centuries, people, thinkers, mystics, and now scientists have been wrestling with this huge question. How much control do we really have over our own reality? All right, let's get into it.
It always starts with a question kind of like this one, doesn't it? It's that thing you whisper to yourself in frustration after a really long day. Or that silent scream when things just will not go right. This is the universal problem, right? That feeling that some invisible force is steering the ship and you're just a passenger. But what if that force isn't some big external mystery? What if the architect of your reality is actually you? So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to go on a little journey. We'll start by uncovering this one single, really powerful idea that's been around for over a century. Then, we'll see how it's changed, what gets in its way, and most importantly, the tools you can use to actually harness it. And then, right at the end, we're going to throw a curveball, a totally different perspective that challenges everything and leaves you with a really important choice to make.
As we were digging through all this material, we found something pretty fascinating. Across all these books, some written more than 100 years apart, from old-school metaphysical texts to modern guides on neurolinguistic programming, we found one single unifying idea. It's like a golden thread that ties them all together. It's the one thing they all agree on.
And this is it. This is the golden thread laid out way back in 1907 by a guy named William Walker Atkinson. So what's he saying? The core belief is that your mind isn't just a passive camera, just recording what happens. No, it's an active, dynamic force, a real power that can be aimed and directed to shape your experience. I know it's a bold claim, almost sounds like magic, but this one idea, it's the foundation for everything that comes after.
Sound familiar? Of course it does. This is just how we say it today. Atkinson's whole dynamic mental principle thing has basically been distilled into the mantras of modern self-help. The idea is exactly the same. Your internal world, what you think about all day, is basically the blueprint for your external world. The big takeaway here is that this isn't some new age idea. It's ancient, just dressed up in modern language.
So, if the idea is the same, how has it evolved? Well, while the core concept, the what, has pretty much stayed the same, the explanation for how it all works has changed dramatically. The language we use has shifted from something that sounds metaphysical to something that sounds like it's straight out of a neuroscience lab.
Yeah, back in the early 1900s, the explanations were all tied up in the science of that era. A term like mentative induction sounds pretty out there to us now, right? But back then, they were trying to use the hot new concepts of their day, like radio waves and this idea of a universal ether, to explain how mental energy could travel from one person to another or even influence events.
Okay, this is where it gets really, really cool. Just look at this direct comparison. What they used to call personal magnetism is now called frame control. Those mysterious vibrations are now explained through something in our brain called the reticular activating system. See the pattern? The magic has kind of been replaced by mechanics, but the goal is exactly the same, directing your mind to change your reality.
So modern sources ground this whole idea in biology. Neuroplasticity tells us that our brain is basically like clay. We can physically change its structure through repeated thoughts and habits. And the RAS, think of it like a search engine for your reality. You know how when you decide you want to buy a specific red car and then suddenly you start seeing that red car everywhere? That's your RAS at work. You tell it what's important and it just relentlessly scans your world looking for it.
Okay, so if our minds are this powerful, why isn't everyone just living their absolute dream life? Well, here's another thing that all our sources, old and new, completely agree on. The biggest obstacle isn't the world outside you, it's the gatekeeper inside your own head. The main battle, they all say, is fought right between your ears.
This gatekeeper is called the critical faculty, and you can think of it like your brain's own personal bouncer. Its only job is to protect you by checking any new information against your current beliefs. So if you deeply believe I'm not good enough, and a new thought comes along that says, hey, you can achieve anything, the bouncer just tosses it right out. It's a huge reason why changing our minds is so incredibly hard.
And this is basically the list that Bouncer's working from. Do any of these sound familiar? Fear of failure, perfectionism, trying to please everyone, having a fixed mindset. According to these sources, these aren't external problems. They're internal filters that literally warp our perception of what's possible, stopping us before we even get started.
But look, knowing the problem is only half the battle, right?
The good news is that these philosophies don't just point out what's wrong. They actually give you a prescription. They provide a pretty practical toolkit for getting past that gatekeeper and starting to reprogram your mind. So here it is, a 4-step process for transformation that we've kind of pieced together from all our sources. First, you've got to find the negative code. Journaling is a great way to do that. Second, you actively rewrite that code with positive self-talk. Third, you use visualization to show your brain the new destination. You give it a picture to work towards. And finally, and this is key, you build habits that make that new reality your automatic default setting. It's a really consistent, practical path.
Now, one of these simplest but maybe most powerful tools in the modern kit is gratitude. Why? Well, it's because your brain literally can't focus on positive and negative things at the exact same time. So by consciously looking for things to be grateful for, you are actively training your brain's filter, your RAS, to seek out the good stuff. You're creating this upward spiral of positive perception. It's kind of like a brain hack.
And once you start to master your own internal world with tools like gratitude, you can begin to influence your external environment. This leads to a more advanced technique they call frame control. It's the idea that in any interaction, the person with the stronger, more deeply held frame, their perception of what's real, will unconsciously pull the other person into it. I mean, think about a super charismatic leader or a really confident salesperson. They have this powerful frame that just shapes the entire conversation.
So far, pretty much every source we've looked at points inward. The power is in your mind, the problems are in your mind, and the solutions are in your mind. But what if that's only half the story? Or even worse, what if it's a complete misdirection? This is where our golden thread of agreement completely unravels, and we run into a major conflict.
Because tucked away in our research was this one dissenting voice, a perspective that argues this whole focus on internal mind power is actually a dangerous illusion, one that distracts us from the real forces that shape our lives.
So this view argues that the real cages aren't our limiting beliefs, but these huge external systems of economic and political control. The idea is that while you're busy trying to visualize a better life with positive thoughts, these much larger, more powerful forces are the ones actually dictating the rules of the game you're forced to play.
And this right here brings us to the final, fundamental choice. Is your locus of control internal or external? Are you the driver, creating your reality from the inside out, or are you a passenger, just navigating a world that's been shaped by forces way beyond your mental influence? Our sources present two totally different maps of reality.
Look, at the end of the day, the answer probably isn't a simple either-or, but the question itself is incredibly powerful. The story your mind is telling, is it about a hero battling inner demons to forge their own destiny? Or is it the story of a hero waking up to the external forces that are really controlling the board? The choice of where to focus your power, well, that's yours.